Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tom and Levi's Notepod, the bite-sized show about video game stuff and just about anything we want to talk about. Today,
Anything.
we're gonna focus today on war games, Tom.
War. God, yeah. There's a
Uh,
lot of video games that tackle the concept of war.
yes,
But,
and I
sorry.
figured because of Battlefield 1, World War Two, and the cyclical nature of video games recently, we should have a little chat just about war games in general and what they mean.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's a good idea. There's so much. There has been so much in terms of, like, realistic war games or futuristic, and, like, I'd like to talk more about past war games. I don't want to go into future games because that's a different
Yeah, I feel
subject
like
for a
we'll
different time.
Yeah, we'll kind of go into that a little bit. We'll branch into it a little bit. But for now, I just want to talk about like maybe the first ones that what meant to us, like the first ones that we kind of experienced. So we grew up in an era where it was all World War Two games for the most part,
Yeah,
sort of on the PlayStation and that generation. So like the most popular ones being maybe Medal of Honor and Call of Duty,
that's
and
right, yeah.
yeah, and I think it was important that in Call of Duty, they were all war games, and it's funny to see how they've evolved now and how much the concept of war almost has been lessened and is less about the actual wars themselves
Yeah,
and why
that's
they go
right. And the horror of
and
war.
why yeah and why they're going back to them and why suddenly now it's important again. I mean, there was a time I think maybe towards the end of the 2000s where World War Two games were becoming stale, which was sad because I always love a good war game, uh, ones that are really in
Yeah,
depth.
it's
But
kind of the same concept with in film. Um, there was a period of time around like this, well, probably since like the 50s going up to like the 70s, where war films, World War Two war films, were at like the peak of their popularity. Around about
yeah,
80s, they kind of like there wasn't really many war films. It was more like Vietnam kind of stuff, And then I guess end of the 90s, Saving Private Ryan came out, and like that kind of it was a bit of a resurgence, I think, in
yeah,
the
it
interest of
almost
World
sort of
War
jump
Two
started,
games.
and yeah, it almost sort of jump started the video game thing because video games are doing. We could just make we can make a war game. I think the earliest war game was Wolfenstein 3D, technically, because that focused on a World War setting, and that was in 1992, and that
Oh, okay.
didn't really touch just yet on like the concept of war because it was Wolfenstein. It was Wolfenstein, so
Yeah, just
clearly
like
there's some aspects that were like changed to make it. Oh, video games. People won't like war games. We need to add something cool like Wolfenstein. So
yeah,
it was still kind of like being touched upon. I think Medal of Honor was the first sort of real cinematic
yeah,
experience
and that
for
was
war games.
developed in part by Steven Spielberg, wasn't
It
it?
was, yeah, it was. So he sort of wanted to. He clearly thought that there was something there for video games to experience something about wars that you got from films, but making it more immersive, I guess. And I think that was 99 Medal of Honor. So
I
it
think
was
you're
like the
right. Yeah,
PlayStation 1 era, sort of Dreamcast, maybe something like that. And that kind of really jump started a trend that lasted for a good decade.
that's right.
And
There was so many Medal of Honor video games.
yeah,
That was like the game that I used to play around my friend's house when I was a kid, like
yeah,
very young.
playing Medal of Honor Finest Hour or something around a mate's house or something.
Yeah,
and 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 like it would be that classic sort of game where you would watch your like I'd watch my brother playing like a Medal of Honor game or watch my dad on the PC and he'd kind of like tell me what was going on because when I couldn't play games I would just sit next to my dad watching games, and of course like it's a dad kind of game. War games are kind of interesting to like parents and stuff.
yeah. It's a very dad concept, isn't it? That's like
Yeah,
everyone's
because
dad always loves a good war film.
or a good yeah, and they
Which
love
is
like
cool.
they're probably playing strategy games in their spare time like Blitzkrieg or something. I know my dad used to play like Commando, and that
Oh
was like
right, yeah.
very sort of based. But yeah, they were. I think it was the best way as kids. I mean, we were growing up with them, and I don't know how often you were listening in history lessons, Tom, but I got a lot through playing war games.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I definitely,
So I ended
and
up
not just
being
so much, not as well. I learned a lot historically about war games. I learned a lot about stuff that I didn't realise that I would find so interesting about like the Eastern Front in World War Two. Because living in
Yeah.
Britain, you often hear about the British
You'll get
involvement and the
biased
French.
views of the war because it doesn't want to make Britain look bad. It's the same that like with
That's right.
Americans. Probably Americans know nothing about Dunkirk and stuff like that purely because it has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, it's
It's
exactly.
natural.
It's more like why would they? You know, why would they
Yeah,
really learn?
exactly. So
And
we've
like,
got these like varied opinions of like we're getting new information almost because like as kids or like growing up we're taught the British aspect. It's nice to get all different sides of the war, which was
that's
quite
right. Yeah.
interesting.
And yeah, like I said, I kind of really enjoyed. Which one was it? I think it might have been Medal of Honor, European Assault. I'm not sure, but that kind of got me into the Eastern Front of World War Two and the involvement the Russians had, the Soviet Union, and it was like that shit still interests me today. I love it. I think
Yeah.
it's incredible, and
Well, I
that
feel
really got
like
me into it.
yeah, I feel like the scenarios that you have found yourself in it encourage you to want to like look it up more. So you'd be like like I don't know, like let's pick something very like obvious in the video game. I think Normandy's been done a lot of times and like the storming of the beaches.
Yeah,
But you're still inclined to think, I'm really interested about this. Why was this happening? This was a real thing. So you're encouraged to like maybe Google it and learn some more, or you've got like a book lying around
that's right.
on
Yeah,
World War Two, and it's really interesting. And not only that, it's like you kind of learn more about what the soldiers did. So like the flanking techniques and the different things that they used, and like wow, that was cool. How did they do that? Very cinematic, but like you kind of learn about like when you hear all the like terminology and stuff, you pick it up through war games than you would. So when you like hear or watch a film about war, you almost feel a little more knowledgeable because you're like, I remember doing this in the game. Yeah, we found the
yeah,
thing and did that. Yeah,
yeah.
and you're kind of talking like speaking with more war lingo purely because you played a game when you were like 12 or whatever at your mate's house. So
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
right.
like I feel like through war video games, there's definitely education because you're learning about war just through playing a game, even if it's like an on rails first person being taken into history. Really, in many ways. I mean, some of them are less historically accurate. I think obviously they jazz them up a bit
Yeah,
because if
historical
they were
accuracy in video
you
games.
can't make many games about wars of attrition where they're just left in the trenches. It probably wouldn't be that fun, even though there were incredibly
Yeah, oh god,
awful
like World War
aspects of war.
One, like people were stuck
I
in
mean,
trenches for years.
if we talk about like, I doubt there's many games that detail the Battle of the Somme because it's most people getting
Just a
like
bloodbath, wasn't it?
get stuck, just stuck in a place. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have war games about that because it's not entertaining, quote
Kind
unquote.
of
I
matter
mean,
of
people like
respect, I think.
yeah, almost. Yeah, exactly. But that being said, do you feel like sometimes there is a disrespect to some aspects of war games? I mean, we haven't
Mm,
even touched the aspect of multiplayer in video games and what's happened and what's become of it.
that's right.
And
Yeah, it's kind
I
of
think we do
that
need
comes
to
into the criticism of
yeah,
that
and
war
it's
games have
interesting to
often received.
well, I mean, we have to. I guess we talk about now is Call of Duty World War Two, and we know what Call of Duty games have been. They're almost going back in time. It's like history's repeating itself really with Call of Duty games because recently we've seen like I don't know what was the latest one. It's not
Oh, I don't
Modern
know.
Warfare, like
Black
Future
Ops
Warfare.
9. So...
Yeah, Black Ops 10, even further into the future where there's robots now and there's no more, there's no soldiers. They're all robots and then Battlefield
Yeah.
1 came out, and Call of Duty were like, oh shit, we need to make a war game quick.
Yeah,
And I
because it
remember
kind of like
seeing,
struck a
like,
chord. People were getting a bit bored of like futuristic shooters. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
it's done, it's been done to death. We can't really relate, you know?
yeah, I mean, eventually, people just got tired of it going so far into the future that, like, Call of Duty are almost grabbing it and pulling it back and going, all right, we'll go back to war because that seems popular right now. We're selling it, we're selling war. And
Mm.
I'm curious to see whether they're going to, really be authentic and historically accurate. And with this new generation, with the amazing graphics, there's a lot more you could possibly explore in more depth because of the capabilities that we have, technologically. I'm curious to see what they're going to do and if they're just going to focus on a single player or if it's going to be like the typical COD
It's just gonna be
method
a
of
complete, yeah,
making a
rehash of like another game.
making a 3 4 hour story and then focusing on multiplayer. And I wonder if the setting of war and World War II and the importance of it is kind of waylaid by the fact that, oh look, it's another first person shooter game where you have to shoot people online, yay. And look at all these guns and all these upgrades you can get and all these different kill streaks. I wonder if people are just going to be, and I feel like they're going to be focused more on that than it being a war game in itself. I
Yeah,
think what
it
Battlefield,
would just be Call of Duty Black Ops 2 multiplayer, but instead of having like assault rifles, you'll have just like an Enfield like
yeah,
Mark
I feel
II
like, yeah,
as
and
about it.
I feel like at least because Battlefield 1 is a multiplayer game, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a multiplayer game, and however, what they've done is kind of capture what World War One felt like almost. They did to their best, in to their best possible in the best possible way. They tried to make a game that felt like you were in a war, as opposed to it being some sort of manufactured like just shooting game. Like this is like
Yeah.
it feels like I've seen early Call of Duty World War Two maps, and it feels like it's just, oh look, another stock room, but it's got a bit of World War Two paraphernalia around it, and
Hey, look,
the
we've got
setting's a bit World War
Nuketown
Two.
again. Yay.
Yeah, in a World War Two setting. I bet if they do that, Tom, we're gonna
They, of
find out.
course they will. They'll have
Oh,
Nuketown version 9.
it will be Nuketown 1939.
Ugh, God's
Set in
sake.
the 60s. But like it's true. I wonder if the importance of war will be lessened by the fact that Call of Duty games, and they know what works with the Call of Duty multiplayer, which is just small rooms where you just shoot people and it doesn't feel like a war. Whereas
There's no
I played
attachment to
yeah,
it.
I played Battlefield 1 recently, and it genuinely feels as though nothing you're here as part of a war and not as a almost as a game. It's not like when I'm playing that game, I feel like I'm in trouble here and I'm with my soldiers and I need to work out a way to like get out of dodge. There's things flying over me. There's fucking zeppelins in the sky, and it
Yeah, it's
feels like
more,
all the risks and all
intensity
the
of war.
dangers, and you feel incredibly vulnerable. And it is very intense. There's like the noise is perfect. Call of Duty games, the reason I stopped playing them is because it felt like it was the same thing over and over again. I don't feel like I'm going to be immersed through like the aspects and the harrowing nature of war, because I feel like I'm just playing another Call of Duty game. So whether it's set in a future setting or if it's set in a like a 60s setting, or if it's in World War Two this year, am I going to be as immersed in the setting if it's mostly about the game and the kill streaks and the multiplayer and the, oh, you need to shoot people and level up and become this,
Yeah.
and whether the aspect of war and what made it worth becoming video games has been lost. I wonder if they're going to lose that. That's what I worry about. And we can also talk then about the historical accuracy and ticking boxes for games so they
Yeah,
sell.
yeah, you spoke to me about this
Yes.
more recently about like kind of diversity in video
Yes,
games.
I think firstly it's good to reiterate that diversity in video games is really important, and I'm really glad that there is
Definitely.
a turn of the tide almost. It feels as though finally we're starting to see a lot more diversity where applicable. I think when you're making a World War Two game, and I hear stories that Call of Duty World War Two is going for the authentic, we're recreating World War Two, and then hearing that like they're gonna have it will include people of color on the front lines and women medics and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that just was not a sign of the times. So already it doesn't feel as though it's really being historically accurate as much as it is just ticking boxes to say, well, look, we've done the diversity thing. I was like, yes, but I
Yeah,
don't understand.
no, I agree.
Why are
I
you being
think
diverse?
accuracy is more important. I don't, like
I mean, unless
there's
you were
people. Was it?
saying, I think
Sorry, you carry
it's all
on.
right. I was talking to, I think, my little brother. I fielded this question to him, and he said, "Yeah, maybe if you said the game was an alternate timeline or something, that would be a good way to spin it. But when you're actually going about and saying, yeah, we want to recreate a World War Two setting accurately, then you're almost shooting yourself in the foot by saying, yeah, but also there's this, and this that wasn't there in the era of World War Two in the setting,
You can
and then
play
you
as
kind of
Hitler.
shoot." Yeah, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot then by saying, "Oh yeah, and then there's smartphones and you can take selfies." Do you know what I mean? It would be like it'd be that kind of thing, right? It's like, hey, look, guys, we're hip, we're cool. Send Snapchats while at war. It just wasn't a thing. Like,
Wow. What if they
yeah, but
did like in Star Wars Battlefront, when you can,
yeah.
like the heroes, you can play as like Darth
Oh my
Vader.
god.
Like suddenly, like Winston Churchill and and Hitler come along. Sorry, that's really dumb and
Oh
inappropriate.
god, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but you know what would happen? They're like, you know that in like 5 years there's going to be a War One game where the zombie of like Franz Ferdinand comes and shoots everyone down with
Oh my
machine guns
god.
and takes like, well, I suppose they've already kind of done it by making Nazi zombies and saying, "Oh, look, guys." I mean, and it worked at the time. It was super popular, but they have rinsed it. They have beat the dead horse and just have shown no signs of stopping. Call of Duty World War Two is going to have a zombie mode, of course,
Oh my god, of course it will.
and it's kind of like, why are we doing this to ourselves? I mean, if you said, oh, we're going to do something different this time, we're gonna make it an alternate timeline, so we're gonna use Call of Duty, and maybe it went differently. I mean, Quentin Tarantino can do it, anybody can do it, but they didn't. They said they were so adamant that it was a historical recreation of war, like of war in 1939 to 45. But it's
But
not
yeah,
the
it's just
case.
wrong.
It's just not,
It's
it's
just
just not.
wrong.
It's just not there from what I've seen. And I bet when the game comes out, it's still going to get praise and stuff like that. Call of Duty games generally do, but I wonder how authentic it's going to be, and whether it's just going to be another Call of Duty game skinned with like a fresh World War Two skin. That's what I'm curious to see, and I wonder what they're going to do with it.
Yeah,
But I guess it also sort of leads into. Are you going to say something?
I was just gonna say about like how realistic can a video game be about war, really,
Yeah, I know.
like
And
without it not being fun.
yeah, exactly. And this is where I was going to lead into makes war games fun to play. I mean, fundamentally, they need to be a fun game, and I think you need to sort of bridge the gap between authenticity. If you're going for a genuine war game, like a historical war game, you've got to think, okay, well, what makes it fun to play, and what is enough accuracy to make it feel as though you are replicating the experience of the war. And I feel like,
Because war is horrible. There's no
yeah,
escaping the fact that
like,
war is not a good thing. It's not fun.
and I
But
think games that capture that whilst making a game, like, it's the gameplay that's fun that we want to focus on. Like, does the game feel good? Do you feel like you're having fun playing it? It's like experiencing story. You may not enjoy a story, but that doesn't mean the story is not good. You can be brought on a ride of emotions where things are happening in a video game, and the narrative is making you feel different things. That's just good storytelling. And I feel like war games can do that. They can put you through the harrowing aspects of war just through story, and let the game play, and you can have a good time, and you want to go forward. And
it's the
I
same
wonder,
concept with movies and films. Like if it's like harrowing, if it's a harrowing subject, there has to be some kind of payoff at the end that makes it
Yeah.
all kind of seem worth it, and like
Exactly.
kind of emotional payoff. If it's just like, oh, everyone died at the end, you'd be like, oh, that's
Yeah, if it's
fun. Well then,
exactly, you kind of want to be taken on a journey, and it's like, you don't want to give up the accuracy. I think that's why games like
It's a fine
really
line, I think.
strategic war games, like Flashpoint. Have you ever heard of those games?
Yeah,
They are
yeah, we spoke
so,
about those in an escape pod, actually.
yeah,
Didn't we?
ever so abruptly. But I just want to mention, like, those games weren't fun for me because they were so tactical and so focused on being the
Yeah.
most authentic, like, shooter games, and it stopped being fun because it was so realistic. And that is a
Well, fair
time.
play to it. Really capture the tedium and the like
Yeah.
the
The dull nature, because it's
boring
not,
part
yeah,
of
not
war.
every people seem to think that war is like, oh, you're like shooting people on the front lines, and it was all incredibly action orientated, and things were happening and explosions, but there is a
No, you're
lot
just
of,
waiting for objectives. You're waiting for a
yeah,
thing. You're just sat in a bush waiting for your next objective, and then you
exactly.
get one shot, and then that's it. Going home. Like,
And like, if you
okay,
made if you made a 100% realistic video game, nobody would play it, and that's a fact, because we leave it to the veterans and all the amazing people who go through the boring stuff and do all this amazing stuff. We'll remember them for their amazing achievements. So, I think it's important that we just don't forget that when you're playing a war game, don't anticipate it be firstly a all out simulation of war, and don't expect it to be like just a crazy game where you shoot people all the time. I think there needs to be a good way to bridge the gap. I think Call of Duty World at War has done it, so we know that they can actually make a good war game because it was engaging and you learned some stuff about the background, but it was very action orientated.
Very popular as well. It's
Yes,
kind of like that fine line between, is it war, especially World War Two. That's specifically World War Two.
yeah, the big
It was
one.
a very terrible, horrible time
Yeah,
of in history. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because they have grandparents or parents or great grandparents who were involved in that in some way. So that's why it really touches a lot of people.
I mean,
But
it's why
it's that fine line of disrespect. If you're gonna they will just glorify you can blow up loads of Germans.
Exactly. I think it's why people are going out right now and seeing Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan,
We saw that
because
together, didn't we, Levi?
we did see that together, Tom. But it gives, not only does it give perspective, but it's giving a real account of things, and I think that's important because you can't forget what war was, and we need to remember how important it was. And
We couldn't be making silly podcasts if it wasn't for what our
Exactly.
forefathers did.
Exactly, we need to just remember that, and I think games always need to carry that before anything else. If you're going to make a war game, capture why war was a thing and why it's important, and it's where context is so it's where context is so important. In video games is especially in war games where you really need to drive home what war was, and games that fail to do that don't grip me or engage me as much, because I think it's not just shoot, open door, shoot things. Like, there needs to be more context there. And if Call of Duty World War II is just another multiplayer game with a story tacked on, I feel like they're going to lose the aspect of what war games are and what they should be. I think they should be
out of it. Sorry.
they should be in part fun, they should be in part educational, but they should also be respectful as to actual real wars, if that's the route you're going down. If you're replicating a real war, remember what the real war stands for.
Yeah, it's that fine line between respect and actually you got to make a fun game.
Yeah, exactly.
At its core, it's still got to be a fun game.
And I bet in 20 years there'll be another World War II game that Call of Duty make when they go further into the future again, and they can get carted back because Battlefield make Battlefield 2, but it's World War II. And then they're like, crap, that's selling, we need to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's become a tired thing, like war games. I think the Simpsons game, didn't they parody it? Like,
yeah, they did. There was a level where you went back to World War Two. You were in France.
I think you're like,
as
if you and Bart in like fatigues with your helmets on, like World War II setting. I think I vaguely remember playing that.
We should play that game together, dude. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, dude, yeah, I've got it. We'll play it.
Oh, that's a good idea, man.
But yeah, what it just took the piss out of there being so many war levels.
It actually, there was a quote. I can't remember what the quote was word for word, but it's like pretty much like, what better way to respect the actions of our forefathers than to glorify war in a video game?
Yeah, which is kind of what we've spoke about, really.
Just summarised everything we've just said.
Yeah, fully fledged glorifying war. Don't do that, and then you're okay. Keep it grounded to an extent with fun gameplay, and I think that's like the perfect war game. That'd be my perfect war game, anyway.
Yeah.
But thanks
Levi's
for talking
perfect
to me.
war game.
Now, my perfect war game. No, but yeah, thank you, Tom. I appreciate you talking to me about war.
No, I appreciate you talking at me about war.
Well, it's an interesting topic, and it's good to rant. And I was like, where better place to rant? But then Tom and Levi's Notepod.
Yay! Let us know what your opinions. Do get in touch. Write down comments. Let us know.
Write us and then send it via Golden Eagle, and then we'll get back to you. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Tom, we need to cut this. We're running on empty now.
That's right, dude.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll open up a dialogue about some other stuff on the next Notepod.
Thank you very much, and stay in school And
Stay in school.
don't go to war.
Thanks for the
War's
PSA,
bad.
Tom.
That's
Yeah,
all right.
PSA from Tom there. Stay in school and don't go to war. Don't go to World War II. Thanks.
Right, bye
Thanks.
bye, Levi.
Thanks, guys. Bye, Tom.